Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video, we will cover how to make hypertrophy training more effective by making the target muscle the limiting factor. First, let's establish what we mean by the limiting factor. This refers to the first element of a set which fatigues and limits the ability to continue lifting the load. For hypertrophy training, we want every single set that is performed to be limited by local fatigue of the target muscle. There are a few other factors that can limit performance, so let's now explore what these are. The first, as we mentioned, is the target muscle. This is when the trainee simply can't perform any more reps because the muscle fibers have been fatigued. This occurs when the majority of tension is placed on that specific muscle group and the muscle fibers simply cannot produce enough force to continue lifting the weight. This is what we want to occur because we want the adaptations to occur in the muscles we are training. However, a set could also be limited prematurely by assistance muscles for that lift. This is only a real concern with compound movements because they involve other muscles and joints which contribute to the movement and stability. If the assistance muscles fatigue before the target muscles, then the target muscles don't get the most stimulus they could have. For example, when performing any form of rows, if the grip limits performance before the back muscles, then the back still has more in the tank and won't receive the maximal stimulus. The next factor which may limit performance is cardiovascular and respiratory fatigue. This refers to the ability of the heart and lungs to supply oxygen to the working muscles. If we have to stop a set because our heart and lungs can no longer keep pace with the exercise, then once again the target muscles don't receive a maximal stimulus. This may be an issue for two primary forms of training. First is for heavy compound lifts using high rep ranges. For example, if a trainee performs back squats for sets of 12 or more, then cardiorespiratory fatigue will almost certainly limit performance before the legs are maximally taxed, especially if multiple sets are performed. The other way this could occur is through supersets, trisets, or circuit training. If we don't give the trainee enough time to recover between exercises, the local muscle may be recovered, but the cardiorespiratory system probably isn't. And the last potential limiting factor for performance is psychological readiness. This refers to the trainee's commitment to the next set. If you don't feel like you are 100% ready to do the next set, then don't do it yet. Just wait another minute or so until you are ready. If a trainee starts a set without full intention to properly train a specific muscle group, then they may simply stop the set due to a lack of intent rather than the muscle failing to contract. Now that we know what factors may limit performance of a set, let's explore some training strategies to help make the target muscle the limiting factor rather than any other factor. The first consideration is exercise selection. Some exercises naturally allow certain muscles to receive the majority of tension while other exercises don't. The exercise that we implement should place tension primarily on a specific muscle group while minimizing tension on other muscles and joints. For example, a stiff leg deadlift places more tension on the hamstrings and takes them through a greater range of motion than a conventional deadlift, and is also less taxing on the spinal erectors. So the stiff leg deadlift is more likely to have the hamstrings as the limiting factor rather than the conventional deadlift. The next factor to consider is technique. We want to lift in a way that places maximum tension on the target muscle and minimal tension on other accessory muscles and joints. If technique is off, we simply distribute the tension to other muscles and joints that we aren't trying to train, causing unnecessary fatigue and less stimulus to the target muscle. There are three general factors which we want to abide by to achieve good technique. First is using a full range of motion. This means that every single rep of every single set should use complete range of motion. The second is using strict technique. This means only producing movement from the relevant muscles and joints and avoiding unnecessary movement from anywhere else. And last is controlling the eccentric. This doesn't mean that the eccentric portion should be lowered very slowly, it just means that there should be a somewhat controlled eccentric contraction rather than simply letting gravity do all the work. Another strategy we can use to help make the muscle the limiting factor is lifting equipment. Lifting equipment helps assistance and stabilizer muscles during the lift, meaning that they are less likely to limit performance before the target muscles. There are three primary forms of lifting equipment that can be beneficial for hypertrophy training. First is straps or VersaGrips. This ensures that grip doesn't fatigue before the prime movers. This can be beneficial for exercises like deadlift variations and any rowing or horizontal pulling movements. The second piece of lifting equipment that can be beneficial is a belt. A lifting belt can enhance the stability of the trunk muscles during exercises like squats, deadlifts, and even some pressing and rowing variations. Since the trunk muscles aren't the target of these compound lifts, the belt increases stability to ensure that they don't give out before the actual target muscles. And the last piece of lifting equipment that could potentially be beneficial is wrist wraps. This may be beneficial for pressing exercises like dumbbell and barbell pressing variations. Wrist wraps can enhance the stability of the wrist during such exercises to allow better force transfer into the bar or dumbbell. Since we aren't training the wrist, we don't need any movement at that joint. This allows the pressing muscles to receive slightly more tension as the wrist is now more stable. And the last consideration to make the muscle the limiting factor is rest periods. As we mentioned earlier, there are other systems that can limit performance before the target muscles. If we don't rest long enough, other systems may still be fatigued and therefore give out during the next set. This is more of a concern for compound lifts rather than isolation lifts because there is more systemic fatigue during compound exercises and more muscles involved for assistance and stability. If rest periods aren't long enough, performance could be limited by cardiovascular fatigue, psychological readiness, or accessory muscle fatigue. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.